Hey guys, remember to like the video and hit subscribe.
What may be one of the Trump administration's most extreme efforts yet, the planned deportation of detainees to Libya. ISIS detained Asian nationals in Texas and allegedly pressured them to voluntarily agree to be transferred to prisons controlled by armed militia in eastern Libya, despite widespread reports of torture and human rights abuses in those facilities. At the same time, Trump is touting a 95% drop in illegal crossings at the U.S.-Mexico border compared to last year. Tim, is this a fear tactic designed to intimidate future migrants into staying away or self-deporting? What do you think is going on here?
There definitely is a desire to try to intimidate people into self-deporting, and they're actively doing this. They're running ads calling on people to self-deport right now throughout the country. So there is that.
Kind of weird.
I think there is a little bit of a sadism to the Stephen Miller wing of the Trump administration. I think some of them like the idea of doing these kind of outlandish types of deportation plans because A, it's intimidating. B, I think they get some kind of pleasure out of it, maybe erotic pleasure, I don't know, but it's hard to keep track of all this stuff. But the Libya thing is the latest. There's another story, I guess a week or two ago, of a guy, Omar Amin, who got deported to Rwanda. He was from Iraq and had been pretty thinly, and I think quite clearly falsely, accused of being part of ISIS when he was in Iraq. He'd then come to America, brought his whole family here, went through the refugee vetting process, was living in Sacramento, was working, did not have any crimes in America, but he was accused. There was some cable where he was on a list of people that were ISIS members. Him and his lawyer says that's false. Anyway, he gets jailed during the first Trump administration, has been jailed since then, and we just sent him to Rwanda, where he's not from. And we have there's another situation I was just reading this morning in New York with these two guys who are 19 and 20, graduated high school, were from El Salvador. Their parents brought them here when they were kids. They hadn't broken any laws, were good students, spoke English, and they went to their immigration checkup, but they ended up getting shackled, sent to Louisiana, and now are about to be sent back to El Salvador, where they don't remember or know anybody in El Salvador. So all of this, is part of the broader effort to, yes, intimidate, and to send a signal to the world that people aren't welcome here anymore. And that's what they want, right? I mean, the only people they're going to welcome into this country are white Afrikaners from South Africa. I don't think you've got to,
You see, we got our first 43 Afrikaners here in the poor refugees from South Africa. My disposition is that the South African white shit is all fake, but that's just because the people who promoted it were people that I didn't trust at all when it came to reporting on racial issues. So it might actually be a big deal, and I'm just biased. I'm not saying that tongue in cheek. It could be that maybe there is some really going on there, but I feel like there was a day or two that I spent trying to dig through it where people were saying that people were the victims of like racial killings, like black people were trying to get vengeance and white people would kill them. And then I feel like when I looked into it, they just looked like robberies. But then other people were saying, well, no, they're targeted robberies of white people. And it's like, maybe, I don't know.
Read between the lines too much on that. And it's outrageous. And I think that, part of the stuff, to your point in the last thing about Democrats, I think that the more Democrats can just speak, whether it's about the economy or whether it's about this stuff, in normal language and focus on things that people understand. People really don't want kids that were brought here when they were 4 to be sent back to El Salvador. Like, that is not a popular policy. They don't want people to be grabbed off the street by masked agents and sent to a prison camp in El Salvador or a prison camp in Libya. Like, those are not popular things. And I think that you can talk about those things in regular language that speak to American values while also, not going down crazy lefty open borders like territory. And I think that it's important to be able to do both.
Yeah, I'm of two minds on this. The first is this is still his most popular policy. And there's just no getting around it. I feel like a lot of this was the Democrats sticking their chin out and just waiting to get tagged hard. 250,000 people crossed the border in December of 23. We were just sort of asking for it. And then they see, okay, them getting Trump, or Biden-Harris hats and free phone cards and hotel rooms, and Americans saying, okay, there's something wrong here. But I've never understood about this whole argument, or where I feel Americans fail to see what's going on, is that immigration is obviously the secret sauce of America, but I've always thought, I'm kind of where Friedman was on this, and that is the most profitable part of immigration is illegal immigration. Because they're essentially the most flexible, inexpensive workforce in history. When there's crops to be picked or old people to be taken care of or dishes to be washed, and we can't afford or find domestic workers, the reason why it's fairly inexpensive to eat out is because of illegal immigration. Some cities, somewhere between 15-25% of fast food workers are undocumented workers. And in addition, they generate a surplus of $100 billion in the Social Security program because most of them are younger and they don't stick around for Social Security. They pay their taxes and then they go back. A mass deportation effort, some estimates put at 4 to 7% loss or reduction in GDP.
I kind of bring this up every now and then, but it feels like a lost cause because it's so anti-intuitive or unintuitive. And I know that when I bring it up, I'm literally the only time in a lot of people's lives that they have ever heard this argument given ever. So it just feels like I'm doing like some libcuck apologia. But illegal immigrants are a fiscal boon to the United States. Fiscal meaning when it comes to state or government budgets. They have a propensity to not consume too much healthcare or other types of welfare programs because you have to fake a lot of documentation to get there. And it's just very hard to collect any of those programs. But if you do steal a Social Security number or steal some kind of like welfare number, it's easy to just collect a legit paycheck and pay taxes into that system. but it's hard to get money out of it. Cato Institute, I think, does the most research on this, but most research, I've never seen anything that contradicts this. Illegal immigrants tend to be quite the fiscal boon, and then if you don't like them or if they get caught with a crime, you want to just like kick them out. So that it's like very, very easy, very good in a sadistic sense, kind of for your budgets, but nobody is.
And also, they're 90% of the undocumented population is working age. About a third of agricultural workers, a quarter of ground maintenance workers, and about a quarter of all food service workers are undocumented. So, I mean, your prices are going to go up, folks. And there's this trope, and there are some very bad people. I do not believe in open borders. I believe you have to have a country. The question I would have for you, because I don't feel as if I'm very knowledgeable, I have deep domain expertise around immigration, is that we want to demonize immigrants. But wouldn't the fastest way to solve this problem to go to the demand side, and that is say to Chipotle or lawn care companies, we're doing random audits, and based on the percentage of people who are clearly undocumented, we're going to find you $10,000 a day, because they don't come here to these immigrants don't come here to commit crimes or to start gang warfare. They come here for jobs. And if you went on the demand side and basically hit those nice American people with real fines, such that they started implementing, and they could do this with biometrics or just simple documentation verification. If there's no jobs, if it's like, okay, I'm sorry, I can't hire you, they melt back to where they came from. But we don't want to do that, do we?
No. Yeah, two thoughts on this. One is, and I think that it reveals a lot about why they're targeting, who they're targeting, what the motivations are. This administration doesn't want to go after business owners directly, right? I mean, if they get hurt by the tariffs because Trump's obsessed with tariffs, that's one thing, but they're not trying to make enemies of people that they think voted for them or possibly voted for them, small business owners. Plus, on top of that, Donald Trump is an employer of illegal immigrants who worked at, his hotels and golf courses, which he knows. So they don't have any interest in doing that. You're exactly right. They could. There's e-verification. I mean, this has been something that like border immigration hawks have been proposing ever since I've been in politics. In fact, many of the candidates I worked for supported that as it was something that's on your policy agenda in the campaign, but then you don't actually put into place in government e-verify because you don't want to actually punish the small business owners that are likely Republican voters. So what they're doing now is they feel like low risk, right? Like who there are probably some working class Hispanic voters that moved over to Trump. They're starting to have maybe a change of heart because they had a cousin or a friend or something who is not a criminal, who's been deported, or they know somebody who has. So there's going to be a little bit of a risk there. But broadly speaking, if you take an 18 and 19-year-old El Salvador, kid that was brought here that can't vote, was brought here illegally by their parents, and you send them back.
You can argue against the right about illegal immigrants. They say, oh, you like slave labor, that's why you want them here. I mean, if they buy into that premise, then you can very easily. The thing is to just get people off of the dumb arguments. Like conservatives will try to do this thing where they're like, oh, well, we don't like them because they're fiscal drains. Like, bullshit. That has nothing to do with any of this. You don't stop. When will conservatives lose the right in U.S. politics? When will they lose the right to complain about the budget? Like conservatives have underperformed Democrats on fiscal stuff for like the last 30 years, since a lot of people here have even been alive. Can we stop giving conservatives credit about giving a f about the budget or about the government spending or anything? Because you clearly don't give a f, or it doesn't show ever.
Back to El Salvador, you're not paying a political price for that in any meaningful way, and it is immoral. It's an affront to what the country is supposed to be about, and it's an affront to the very American ethos of people wanting to come here and have an opportunity. But you're not paying a political price there. There's obviously some racial elements to it, as referenced earlier with the white Afrikaners, but there's also just they feel like it's much more politically palatable to go after 18 and 19-year-old kids that would have been dreamers or whatever than it is to go after American business owners. And just one really quick thing on the economy. I agree. This all takes time. Like this is going to happen now. But just adding on to what we talked about earlier with tariffs. Okay, you add onto that, we're deporting a bunch of people that are working, doing cheap work. We're not bringing in nearly as many people as we were. So the shutting down of the border is good in that it's shutting down some of the fentanyl traffic and some of the gang labor, but it's also shutting down people that were coming here to work. And then on top of that, we're firing a lot of people in the federal workforce. We're putting them on the sidelines. They're probably going to end up getting paid anyway. So we're going to be paying them to do nothing while that goes to the courts. And it's harder for recent college grads to get jobs, in a lot of these areas because people don't know what's going to be happening with the government. I just think that there are a lot of economic factors there that are.
What does the budget have to do with slave labor? Well, nothing, but conservatives don't give a f about slave labor. They don't care about any of these moral issues for immigrants. It's some other shit that they care about. That's it. But get them off the weird budget talk because they clearly don't give a fuck about it, and then have a more honest conversation.
Pointing to a pretty bad situation, once it all, starts to hum through the economy.
Let me put forward a thesis and I want to get your response to it. So I have a 17-year-old son, and there's been reports and verification of actual people who aren't criminals, people who were brought here, grew up here, being deported, some ending up in these hellscapes prisons, and also reports of U.S. citizens. And my view is, unfortunately, that a lot of Democrats who are very wealthy clutch their pearls and say at dinner parties how outraged they are, but they don't really do a fucking thing about it. Because there's this emerging what I'll call transnational oligarchy, togarchs. And that's, if you're in the 1%, you have a disproportionate amount of power. And without you, it's very hard to get anything done without your support. And so it's easy to complain about it at dinner parties. But the reality is in America that your rights have become a function of your wealth. My kid is not going to be sequestered by ICE and sent to El Salvador. There's just zero chance that could happen. I will not be silenced because I have the money to lawyer up. Anyone in my life that becomes pregnant, I don't care if I'm in deepest, reddest Mississippi, I can get access to family planning because I have money. And if shit really gets real, and on the, quite frankly, just the unlikely chance we start rounding up Jews and I get on the wrong list, well before that, I have the money to piece out to Milan or Dubai.
Yeah.
And what that creates is this lack of incentive or this divesting of the most powerful's interest in America. And that is, whereas before, I think the really wealthy thought, I'm going to stay here. If this could happen to them, it could happen to us. But now there's a feeling amongst me, well, I was turning this back to me, but among the real...
I really liked the, somebody made a tweet. Do I like it or is it just sad? Does anybody have a link to somebody just made a tweet and it was like, the year is 2014. Barack Obama accepts a $500 million plane from some country. He tells you that he absolutely won't use this or it's not going to influence his opinions or foreign policy. And it's just like, even just like reading it, like I can already see the conservative brains exploding. Like just reading that tweet and imagining what it would have been like. Was it the Onion guy that, the Onion, is his name Tim Onion? Let me just type that in. Oh, maybe it was on a blue sky, but it's 2015. President Barack Obama has accepted a Sky Palace jumbo jet from the Qatari government, which he'll own after he leaves office. Everybody relax, he says in an interview with the New York Times. Everyone does. The networks then televised the military parade in his honor on his birthday. It's just like, I still need to find out if Trump can actually keep this jet.
Happen to them, it could happen.
I still don't
to
know the answer to that.
Us. But now there's a feeling amongst me, well, I was turning this back to me, but among the really wealthy, they were insulated from some of this, that it really doesn't impact us. So we have our own schools, we have our own security, we have our own healthcare, we have our own legal rights. We're protected by the law, but we're not bound by it. And it creates this really unhealthy ecosystem where the most powerful in our nation, even who claim to have progressive values, really don't feel that same sense of vested interests in the maintenance and fidelity to American values. Because at the end of the day, we're kind of global citizens, and our governance is the dollar. We're basically how much money we have, and we can find those rights somewhere else, even if they're violated here. Your thoughts?
I think that there's some of that. Look, you're always going to paint with a broad brush in these sort of situations. Like there are certainly rich liberals that are out there doing what they can, and others that are, feel like how you did. And I hear from Bulwark listeners, like upper middle class people, that have come up to me and say that they're thinking of leaving. Like, I had a woman just over the weekend that was like, "I'm thinking about moving to Australia."
Damn. Wait.
This sick ass invention. I don't know who made it, but they're the goat. It's called a firm. We can basically just get a loan on our flight. It's so sick. It's like a free flight. We got a payment plan for our flight. $16 a month, 34% APR, $0 due today. Confirmed. You're going to Miami for free.
Hey. Wait, that sounds awesome.
Husband is a citizen or something, and I was like, don't leave, I'm not going anywhere. You're fine here. You actually, because of what you just laid out, Scott, like if you're a citizen of this country that has enough money for a lawyer, like you're in pretty good shape right now. We'll see how things look when Donald Trump is deteriorating at age 81 in 2027. Maybe my assessment will change on that, but as of right now, you're fine, and you should be staying here and should be fighting. So I think there's a little bit of that. I also think the Democratic Party, and this is going to go against my policy preferences is probably, but I think that from a political standpoint, this is important. Like, the Democratic Party has not done a particularly great job of recruiting people that are from the working class, that are from the non-globalist parts of America to be spokespersons for the party. A lot of times those people are probably going to be they're probably going to have different views from me on social and economic issues, right? Like I'm kind of a fiscally conservative, socially liberal, whatever cliche. Like the Democrats should probably be recruiting people that are more fiscally left than me and have some maybe contrarian social views, because that is like the most popular combination of political views for working class people.
Seeing everybody go crazy, or should I say go crazy? Maybe I'm exaggerating a bit, but seeing everybody getting ass pained about Gavin Newsom's take on trans athletes, where it's like, guys, come on, we need to do better than this.
And I think the Democrats have done a lot of recruiting of people that like are maybe from somewhere in America and then were the valedictorian and then went to a fancy school and then worked at McKinsey and then went back to where they came from, or and nothing against any of those people, but they're going to have a set of views that are closer to what you just lined out, that have a more of a globalist kind of mindset. And I do think it would help the Democrats to have people that like authentically sound like they are from the communities that are going to be hurt by this. Yeah.
It shocked me a couple days ago. There was a new poll showing that if the election were held again today, that Harris would still lose, or that Trump would win.
Who would be doing a better
Really, though? Who would be doing a better job as president among registered voters who said they voted in 2024?
job as president? Guess who comes out on top? Within the margin of error comes on top. This looks a lot like the election result, right? Trump 45%, 2 points ahead of Harris at 43%. 12% say they'd be doing about the same. But this is the key nugget here. It's not just about regretting that vote. It's literally saying who would be doing the better job.
I think you should look at this as a poll. This is a poll. For the election, it would come down to, like, you'd have to start going through the individual states to figure out who would actually win the election again, right? It's hard to say if that would come out the same way or not.
Right now, and Trump continues to score a higher percentage of the vote than Kamala Harris.
Yeah, my sense is,
shocked by that.
I was shocked by that, especially when you see the swing among young people. But I mean, it is what it is. And as unpopular as Trump is, the Democratic Party is less popular. And I think as we sit, again, crying into TikTok, the reality is where the analogy I used to use was that the Panzer tanks come rolling into Poland and we're fighting Democrats, as Democrats were fighting them on horseback. And then someone reminded me, actually, that was a successful military operation. I should stop disparaging the heroes of the Polish army in World War II. So, but my point is, the only thing that feels more corrupt in the Trump administration, or kind of coarse and cruel right now, is just how weak the Democratic Party is.
Yeah, well, it's not more corrupt, but it's sadder.
No.
It has more
weak.
impact. Yeah, more weak for sure.